First contact. The crisp holographic display flickered before my eyes as I studied the coordinates one final time. My hands, usually steady after decades of interstellar trading, trembled slightly as I input the final sequence. The human space station loomed ahead, a structure that defied our understanding of engineering with its seemingly impossible angles and ethereal glow. I, Saranai Val, was about to become either the richest trader in the Concordant or another cautionary tale about human encounters. The decision to venture into human space hadn't come easily. For 3 cycles, I'd watched from afar as other species tried and failed to establish meaningful contact with these beings. The humans had appeared suddenly in our galaxy, their technology so advanced it made our best scientists weep, yet they showed no interest in conquest or dominion. That's what made them truly terrifying. My ship, the Meridian Whisper, carried the finest goods from 17 different species. In my cargo hold lay crystalline sculptures from the artisans of Nexus 7, rare spices from the floating gardens of Caldera, and technological marvels from the forge worlds of the Machine Collective. Any one of these items could purchase a small moon in the right market. Yet as I approached the human station, I felt like a primitive offering trinkets to gods. Unidentified vessel, please state your intentions, a calm voice echoed through my ship's comm system. The translation matrix struggled for a moment before settling on a close approximation of their language. This is trading vessel Meridian Whisper, requesting permission to dock and establish trade relations, I responded, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. My skin, normally a deep sapphire blue, had likely paled to a ghostly cyan. Silence stretched for what felt like eternities. Permission granted, Meridian Whisper. Please proceed to Docking Bay E-17. Welcome to New Horizon Station. Just like that. No demands for credentials. No extensive scanning. No bureaucratic loops to jump through. The simplicity of it sent chills down my spine. Either they were incredibly naive, or so powerful they had nothing to fear from visitors. As my ship glided toward the designated bay, I noticed something odd about the station's defense systems, or rather, the apparent lack thereof. No weapon emplacements were visible, no shield generators hummed with deadly potential. Yet stories spoke of human vessels shrugging off concentrated fire from entire battle fleets as if they were merely cosmic dust. The docking procedure was unervingly smooth. My ship's systems interfaced perfectly with their technology, despite the vast gulf between our civilizations. As the airlock cycled, I performed the traditional trader's ritual, checking my personal shields, ensuring my emergency beacon was active, and taking a deep breath of my ship's familiar air before stepping into the unknown. The first thing that struck me was the gravity. Perfect, natural gravity, not the slightly off artificial fields we relied upon. The second was the air, clean, fresh, with none of the metallic tang common to space stations. But the third observation made my hearts nearly stop. Children. Human children were playing freely in the docking area, their laughter echoing off the pristine walls. In any other species station, this would be unthinkable. Docking bays were dangerous, restricted zones. Yet here were young humans, running and playing as if they had nothing to fear from the universe. A tall human approached me, wearing what appeared to be casual attire rather than any official uniform. Welcome to New Horizon. I'm David Chen, Station Commerce Coordinator. Would you like a tour of our marketplace? I managed to nod, my translator implant working overtime to process his words. This David Chen moved with a predator's grace, despite his friendly demeanor. Like all humans, his endoskeleton was internal, hidden beneath layers of soft tissue, a terrifying evolutionary choice that made them impossible to read. Wonderful. We've been hoping more independent traders would visit. The corporate conglomerates can be so inflexible. He smiled, showing teeth, a gesture I knew was meant to be friendly but reminded me that humans were one of the few omnivorous species capable of eating nearly anything in the galaxy. As we walked through the station's corridors, I began to notice things. Subtle things. The walls weren't just walls, they seemed to shift and flow with patterns that suggested phase shift technology far beyond our understanding. The lighting adjusted automatically to provide optimal visibility for different species' visual ranges. Even the air composition shifted slightly as we moved, accommodating different biological needs. Your technology. I began, then hesitated. David's smile widened. Yes. Please, feel free to ask questions. That's why we're here. It's integrated at a level we've only theorized about. The phase shift capabilities alone. Oh, that? He waved dismissively. Basic stuff, really. We mainly use it for mining asteroids and maintaining station integrity. Much more efficient than traditional methods. I nearly tripped over my own feet. Mining asteroids? They use technology that could potentially tear reality apart, for mining? The implications made my head spin. If they used such power for simple resource gathering, what did they possess for actual defense? The marketplace itself was a shock to my system. Humans moved freely among aliens from dozens of worlds, haggling, laughing, sharing meals. A Croixian crystal merchant argued good-naturedly with a human child over the price of a glowing gem. A human female demonstrated what appeared to be a musical instrument to a fascinated group of Zenthari monks. Feel free to set up wherever you'd like, David said, gesturing to several empty stalls. Our only rules are simple: no weapons trading, no slaves, and all transactions must be consensual. Oh, and please don't be alarmed by the children, they're perfectly safe here. I nodded numbly, still processing everything I'd seen. As I began setting up my wares, a small human child approached my stall, looking curiously at a Caldarian spice crystal. "What's that?" she asked, pointing with a tiny finger. It's a cooking spice," I explained carefully. "It makes food taste better." Her eyes lit up with an intensity that made me step back. Mom! Mom! Come look at this. They have new spices." What followed was a blur of activity as human after human visited my stall, examining my goods with an enthusiasm I'd never encountered. They asked questions about everything, not just about the items themselves, but about the cultures that created them, the worlds they came from, the stories behind them. And they traded. By the gods, did they trade? They offered things I'd never seen before, devices that seemed to break fundamental laws of physics, foods that defied description, art that moved the soul. But more than that, they offered friendship, sharing stories and jokes as if I were an old acquaintance rather than a terrified alien merchant. As the station's day cycle drew to a close, I found myself sitting in what they called a café, sharing a beverage with David and several other traders. My initial terror had faded to a sort of numb amazement. "You seem troubled," David observed, sipping something he called coffee. "I don't understand," I admitted. "Your technology, your power, you could dominate the galaxy. Yet you're here, trading trinkets and telling stories." He laughed, a sound I was beginning to find less threatening. "Why would we want to dominate anything? That sounds like far too much work. Besides, trading is much more interesting. Did you know you're the first trader to bring Caldarian spices to our station? My wife's going to experiment with them in her restaurant. Speaking of which, would you like to join us for dinner? She's always excited to try new ingredients." I agreed, still somewhat dazed. As I followed David through the station's corridors, I couldn't help but wonder, had we all misunderstood the humans from the beginning? We saw their power and assumed they would be conquerors because that's what we would have done. Instead, they chose commerce and conversation. Perhaps that was the greatest insult of all, they were so powerful they didn't even need to prove it. Ripples of change. The journey back to concordant space felt surreal. My cargo hold, once filled with the finest luxuries of 17 worlds, now brimmed with human goods that would reshape the galaxy. I sat in my pilot's chair, occasionally reaching out to touch the strange fabric of my new clothing, something the humans called denim, to reassure myself it wasn't all a dream. The security checkpoint loomed ahead, its familiar angular architecture now seeming somehow primitive after my time at New Horizons Station. I transmitted my credentials, wondering how to explain what I'd experienced without sounding completely insane. Trader Saranai Val, the gruff voice of Security Chief Caxtil crackled through my comm, your signature shows significant cargo modifications. Please explain. I took a deep breath. I've returned from human space. With trade goods. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Caxtil spoke again, his voice tight with tension. Dock at Bay 7. A full security detail will meet you. As I guided the Meridian Whisper into the bay, I could see the assembled welcoming committee, 3 senior security officers, a medical team, and what appeared to be a representative from the Concordant Intelligence Division. Their expressions ranged from concern to outright fear. The moment I stepped out of my ship, the medical team rushed forward with their scanners. Chief Medical Officer Venare's facial tendrils writhed in confusion as she studied the readings. This can't be right, she muttered. Your cellular structure shows signs of exposure to multiple phase shift fields, yet you're perfectly healthy. And these readings from your new garments. The humans use phase shift technology for everything, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. Mining, construction, even waste recycling. They treat it like we treat anti-grav tech, just another tool. The intelligence officer, a tall Zenthari named Ninelon, stepped forward. You actually spoke with them? Traded with them? How did you even survive their security protocols? I couldn't help but laugh, though it came out slightly hysterical. Security protocols. They let their children play in the docking bays. Their idea of security was asking me politely not to sell weapons or keep slaves. Impossible, Caxtil growled. They must have hidden defenses. Automated systems. Something. Oh, they have defenses, I agreed. But not what you're thinking. Here, let me show you something they traded me. I retrieved a small device from my pocket, what the humans called a smartphone. The assembled officials flinched back as if I'd produced a weapon. It's just a communication and entertainment device, I assured them. They give these to their children. Watch. I activated the holographic display, showing them recordings I'd made of daily life on New Horizons Station. The officials crowded around, their professional detachment forgotten in the face of such wonders. By the void, Venare whispered. Is that human child eating Croixian crystal fruit? Their digestive systems can process that. Humans can eat almost anything, I explained. Their digestive system is terrifying in its efficiency. But that's not the most impressive part. Look at this. I showed them footage of the station's market, where humans and aliens mingled freely. Where advanced technology was traded alongside artwork and cooking spices. Where children of different species played together while their parents haggled over prices. This is why they're so dangerous, I said softly. They don't need weapons or threats. They're changing the galaxy simply by existing, by showing us a different way of doing things. Ninelon's normally unreadable face showed clear concern. We need to convene the Concordant Council immediately. This changes everything. Wait until you see what I brought back, I told them. My cargo hold is full of human goods, entertainment, food, technology, art. All freely traded, all with complete documentation and safety certifications. The next several hours were a blur of inspections, questioning, and increasingly panicked discussions among the officials. They found nothing dangerous in my cargo, at least, nothing dangerous in the traditional sense. But every item raised new questions, new implications that made them increasingly uncomfortable. The human entertainment devices, loaded with what they called movies and video games, showed worlds and possibilities that defied our understanding. Their food products contained flavors that had master chefs weeping in confusion. Their simple toys demonstrated engineering principles our finest minds struggled to comprehend. But it was the music that truly broke them. I set up one of the human musical instruments, a guitar, and played a simple melody I'd learned during my stay. The sound echoed through the security bay, rich and complex in ways our traditional harmonics couldn't match. Several of the younger security officers began swaying unconsciously to the rhythm. "Stop," Cac still ordered, but his voice lacked conviction. "This needs to be contained. Quarantined." "It's too late for that," I replied, continuing to play. "I'm not the only trader who's visited them. Even now, human goods are spreading through the galaxy. Human ideas. Human ways of thinking. And do you know what the truly terrifying part is?" "What?" Ninlon asked, his diplomat's composure cracking. "They're doing it all by accident. They don't even realize how much they're changing things. They're just being human." The impact of my words was interrupted by an alert from the station's communication system. Similar reports were coming in from across concordant space, other traders returning from human territories, their ships laden with goods and their minds full of impossible stories. "The council chambers," Ninlon decided. "Now. Bring samples of everything. They need to understand what we're dealing with." As we made our way to the council chambers, I caught snippets of conversations from passing citizens. Word was spreading fast. Stories of human stations where different species lived in harmony. Tales of technology so advanced it seemed like magic, yet freely shared. Songs and stories that sparked something deep in alien hearts. The council chamber was already packed when we arrived. Representatives from every major species in the concordant sat in their traditional seats, but the usual strict protocols were noticeably absent. Everyone was talking at once, sharing rumors and speculation about the humans. I stood before them, surrounded by samples of human goods, and began to speak. I told them everything, about the station, the trading, the casual use of technology we considered legendary. With each revelation, the chamber grew quieter, until you could hear the soft hum of the environmental systems. "So," the High Counselor finally said, "they could destroy us at any time, yet they choose to trade with us instead. To share their culture, their knowledge, their entertainment." "Yes," I confirmed. "And they do it all with a smile, treating us not as inferior beings to be conquered, but as equals to be befriended." "This is worse than war," one of the military representatives growled. "At least war we understand. This is changing who we are." "Perhaps," I suggested, "that's exactly what we need." The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to close our borders to human influence. Others saw opportunities for advancement and profit. But all of them understood, on some level, that the galaxy was already changing. The humans hadn't needed weapons or armies to conquer us, they'd done it with music, food, and friendship. As I left the council chambers that evening, I passed a group of young concordant citizens gathered around a human entertainment device, their faces lit with wonder as they explored virtual worlds. In the distance, I could hear someone playing that guitar melody I'd demonstrated earlier. The invasion had already begun, not with warships and weapons, but with ideas and imagination. And none of us, not even the humans themselves, knew quite where it would lead. Cultural cascade. 6 months after my initial contact with the humans, I stood in my newly expanded trading complex on Concordant Prime, watching as hundreds of beings from dozens of species browsed through what had become known as human quarters. The massive structure, spanning several city blocks, had started as a simple storefront but had grown exponentially as demand for human goods skyrocketed. Trader Vol, a young Zenthari acolyte, approached me, her crystalline form shimmering with excitement. "The new shipment of what humans call pizza has arrived. Should we begin the cooking demonstrations?" I nodded, remembering my own first taste of the seemingly simple food. The humans had somehow created a dish that could be modified to suit almost any species' dietary needs while maintaining its essential character. It had become a symbol of their peculiar genius, taking something basic and transforming it into a universal experience. And the music festival preparations? I asked, though I could already hear the sounds of various species attempting to master human instruments. The guitar had sparked a cultural revolution among the Zentari, whose crystalline bodies could create haunting harmonics with the stringed instruments. Meanwhile, the rhythmic complexity of human drums had captured the imagination of the hibernation-prone Ursulads, giving them a new way to mark time during their long sleep cycles. The main stage is ready, she replied. Though there's been another debate about whether to include human rock music. Some elders feel it's too energetic. I suppressed a laugh. Let them debate. The young ones will listen to it anyway. Walking through the complex, I passed dozens of small businesses that had sprung up around human goods and concepts. A Croixian ran a cafe serving various human beverages, each carefully modified for different species biochemistry. A group of Doarian warriors, once known for their rigid military discipline, operated a gym teaching human exercise techniques that had proven remarkably adaptable to various physiologies. My comm unit buzzed, another update from the Concordant Council. Despite their initial fears, they'd found it impossible to contain human influence. Instead, they'd shifted to studying and attempting to understand it. The message contained their latest findings on the economic impact of human trade. The numbers were staggering. Sectors that had established regular trade with human stations showed an average 300% increase in cross-species cooperation. Crime rates had dropped significantly in areas where human entertainment had become readily available. Even traditional enemies were finding common ground through shared appreciation of human culture. Saranai, a familiar voice, called out. I turned to see David Chen, the human commerce coordinator who'd first welcomed me to New Horizon Station. He'd arrived last week as part of the first official human trade delegation to Concordant Prime. David, I greeted him warmly. How are the negotiations progressing? He grinned, that still somewhat terrifying display of teeth now familiar. Better than expected. Your council finally stopped trying to figure out our hidden agenda and started focusing on practical matters. Though they're still struggling with our policy on technology sharing. I understood their confusion. The humans' approach to technology was unprecedented in galactic history. They freely shared what they called general-use technology, everything from their phase-shift mining techniques to their advanced medical knowledge, while maintaining only a few restrictions on what they considered potentially harmful applications. Did you show them the education programs? I asked. Yes, and that's actually why I came to find you. They're particularly interested in what we call the Internet, the idea of a galaxy-wide information sharing network. They want you to help coordinate its implementation in concordant space, given your experience with both cultures. I felt my skin pale slightly. That's a significant responsibility. The network itself is simple enough, David assured me. It's the cultural impact that needs careful management. Speaking of which, he gestured toward a gathering crowd at the complex's central plaza. A human child was teaching a group of alien children something called hopscotch, while their parents watched with a mixture of concern and fascination. The game had no practical value, no military application, no obvious benefit, yet it was bringing different species together in a way countless diplomatic initiatives had failed to achieve. This is what truly terrifies the conservative factions, I observed. Not your technology or your military potential, but how easily you reshape social structures just by being yourselves. David nodded thoughtfully. We've noticed that. It's why we're trying to be more mindful of how we introduce certain concepts. For instance, we've had to explain that our entertainment isn't all meant to be taken literally. Some species were quite concerned about our superhero stories, thinking we were hiding our true capabilities. A commotion near the food court drew our attention. A Doarian chef had apparently combined human pizza concepts with traditional Zentari crystal spices, creating something entirely new. The resulting dish had drawn a crowd of various species, all eager to try this unprecedented fusion. See? David grinned. That's what we love about all this. We're not just sharing our culture, we're seeing it evolve and change through interaction with yours. Have you tried human-inspired Croixian music yet? It's fascinating what they've done with our basic chord structures. Before I could respond, my comm unit buzzed again. This time it was an alert about a new phenomenon spreading through the younger population, something called memes. Apparently, human humor was proving to be as infectious as their music and food, though often just as difficult for traditional authorities to understand. Oh, meme culture, David chuckled. Maybe we should have warned you about that. It's sort of a spontaneous cultural evolution through shared jokes and references. Hard to explain, but it seems to work across species boundaries somehow. I was about to ask for clarification when a group of Ursulid youngsters walked past, wearing human-style clothing and speaking in what I recognized as movie quotes. They seemed to be reenacting scenes from popular human films, but with their own cultural twists added. That's another thing, David mused. We expected some cultural exchange, but the speed of adoption and adaptation is surprising even to us. Your species aren't just copying our culture, you're transforming it, combining it with your own traditions to create something entirely new. He pointed to a shop window where traditional concordant ceremonial robes were being displayed alongside human jeans and t-shirts. The resulting fashion hybrids would have been unthinkable just months ago, yet now they seemed perfectly natural. The council's latest concern, I told him, is about maintaining cultural identity. They're worried that human influence is too strong, that it might erase traditional ways of life. David's expression grew serious. We've seen that concern before, in our own history. But culture isn't a zero-sum game. Look around, are your people losing their identity, or are they finding new ways to express it? He had a point. The Zenthri hadn't abandoned their crystal harmonics when they discovered human music, they'd incorporated it, creating new forms of artistic expression. The Dorians hadn't forgotten their warrior traditions when they learned about human sports, they'd adapted them into new training methods. There's something else, I said, remembering a pattern I'd noticed. Human influence seems to be strongest where it's least imposed. The more any authority tries to restrict it, the more appealing it becomes. Forbidden fruit syndrome, David nodded. Another very human concept. Speaking of which, have you heard about the underground human movie screenings in the conservative sectors? I hadn't, but I wasn't surprised. Despite official restrictions, human culture had a way of seeping through any barrier. It was like trying to stop water with a net, the harder you tried, the more ways it found to flow through. As we walked through the complex, I saw countless examples of this cultural fusion in action. A Croixian street artist was using human spray paint techniques to create traditional celestial patterns. A group of Doarian children were playing human basketball using anti-gravity fields. Even the architecture of the complex itself had begun to shift, incorporating human design elements into traditional concordant styles. You know what the real irony is? I asked David as we watched the diverse crowd move through the plaza. All those cycles we spent preparing for possible human invasion, and in the end, you conquered us with pizza and pop music. He laughed. We didn't conquer anything. We just opened a door. You all chose to walk through it. Looking at the vibrant, chaotic, beautiful fusion of cultures before us, I couldn't help but think he was right. The galaxy was changing, not through force or conquest, but through shared meals and shared stories, through games and songs and simple human friendship. And somehow, that was the most powerful invasion of all. Trader Val, High Counselor XRA addressed me, her normally pristine ceremonial robes showing signs of stress wear. Your latest report on human cultural integration is disturbing. Please elaborate for the full assembly. I activated the holographic display, showing real-time data streams from across concordant space. The traditional power structures are experiencing unprecedented shifts. The Doarian Military Academy has reported a 60% drop in traditional enrollment, but a 300% increase in what they're calling humanitarian operations training. The Zenthari crystal monks have begun incorporating human meditation techniques into their practices, leading to what they describe as enhanced harmonic resonance. These are mere cultural adjustments, General Caxtil interrupted, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. The real concern is the political destabilization. The two cannot be separated, I explained. Human concepts of governance, particularly what they call democracy and individual rights, are spreading through our populations like a mimetic virus. But it's not just their political systems, it's their fundamental approach to problem solving. I shifted the display to show footage from various worlds. On Doaria, traditional warrior ceremonies now included human, sports competitions. Zenthari meditation chambers had been modified to include human entertainment systems. Even the notoriously conservative Croixian hierarchy had begun allowing public gatherings in coffee shops. Most concerning, I continued, is the emergence of what humans call social media. Despite our best efforts to regulate it, citizens across all species are using human communication technology to share ideas, organize gatherings, and question traditional authorities. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. A Croixian elder rose, his scales flashing warning colors. This is precisely why the hierarchy has proposed the Cultural Preservation Act. We must protect our traditional ways before they're completely eroded. With respect, Elder, I replied, similar measures have been attempted in 17 sectors. In each case, they've not only failed but accelerated the adoption of human customs. The more restrictions we impose, the more appealing human culture becomes, particularly to younger generations. Then what do you suggest? High Counselor XRA asked. We cannot simply allow our societies to be dismantled by human entertainment and fast food. I took a deep breath. I believe we're asking the wrong question. Instead of trying to resist this change, we should try to understand why it's happening. The humans aren't forcing their culture upon us, they're offering possibilities we never considered. I switched the display to show various examples of cultural fusion. A Doarian martial arts school that had incorporated human yoga and meditation. A Zenthari crystal forge using human manufacturing principles to create entirely new art forms. A Croixian religious ceremony being live-streamed to millions of followers. Our people aren't abandoning their cultures, I explained. They're evolving them. The humans have shown us that tradition and innovation aren't mutually exclusive. But the political implications, General Caxtil began, are inevitable, I finished. But not necessarily negative. Look at the data. Sectors with the highest human cultural integration also show the lowest rates of civil unrest, the highest economic growth, and the most technological innovation. At the cost of our traditional authority, a Zenthari elder noted grimly. No, I corrected. At the cost of our rigidity. The humans have shown us that authority can be maintained through respect rather than fear, through cooperation rather than control. I brought up new statistics. In the past year, cross-species cooperation has increased by 400%. Trade disputes have decreased by 60%. Even traditional enemies are finding common ground through shared appreciation of human culture. And perhaps most significantly, we're seeing unprecedented levels of scientific and artistic innovation as our people combine human ideas with our own traditions. But what of security? General Caxtil demanded. These human entertainment devices, these smartphones and tablets, they're perfect tools for surveillance. For control. Yet the humans just give them away freely, with no restrictions. I allowed myself a small smile. That's what makes them so brilliant. They understand something we never did. True power doesn't come from controlling information, but from sharing it freely. Their technology isn't a tool of control, it's a platform for connection. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. A young Doarian representative stood, her traditional armor decorated with human-inspired designs. Perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong direction. Instead of trying to prevent these changes, we should be guiding them. Learning from them. Exactly, I agreed. The humans have given us something far more valuable than technology or entertainment. They've shown us that change doesn't have to mean loss. That progress doesn't require conquest. That power can be shared without being diminished. I showed them one final piece of data, a survey of young citizens across all species. Our next generation already understands this. They're not choosing between our traditions and human ideas, they're finding ways to embrace both. They're creating something entirely new, something neither we nor the humans could have imagined alone. High Counselor XRA leaned forward. And what of the humans themselves? How do they view these developments? With fascination, I replied. They're as changed by contact with us as we are by contact with them. Their artists are incorporating Zenthary crystalline harmonics into their music. Their scientists are studying Doarian battle meditation techniques. Their chefs are experimenting with Croixian spice patterns. They don't want to replace our cultures, they want to learn from them. The debate continued for hours, but I could see the shift in the assembly's thinking. The fear of human influence was being replaced by something else: curiosity, possibility, hope. As the session concluded, I received an urgent message from my trading complex. A new human entertainment form called virtual reality had been introduced, allowing beings to experience life from other species' perspectives. The implications were staggering, not just for entertainment, but for diplomacy, education, and cross-species understanding. We stand at a crossroads, I told the assembly. We can continue to resist this change, fighting a battle we've already lost. Or we can embrace it, guiding our societies toward a future that preserves the best of who we are while remaining open to who we might become. Looking around the chamber, at representatives of species that had been enemies for millennia now sitting together, sharing human snacks and discussing human entertainment, I realized something profound. The humans hadn't just changed our societies, they'd changed how we thought about change itself. And that, perhaps, was their most revolutionary export of all.